I am Gloria, 32 years old, a marketing specialist from Boston, with a complicated relationship with my parents. We have this family tradition of taking annual vacations together that I used to look forward to. This year, we planned a Caribbean cruise that I was so excited about until they called saying it was too expensive and had to be canceled. Imagine my shock when I opened Instagram and saw their location tag from on board the very same cruise ship. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever discovered a betrayal through social media. Trust me, what happened next will show you exactly why sometimes walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. My relationship with my parents has always been a mix of love and control. Growing up in suburban Massachusetts, I was raised by my father Thomas, an investment advisor, who managed everyone's finances with precision, and my mother Diane, an elementary school teacher, with a warm smile but strict expectations. Our middle-class home was always spotless, our schedules carefully planned, and our appearances meticulously maintained for what my parents called the sake of the family image. From an early age, I learned that my parents' version of love came with strings attached. They paid for piano lessons, but I had to practice 2 hours every day. They bought me new clothes, but selected styles they approved of. They supported my education, but steered me toward majors they deemed practical. Every gift, every opportunity came with unspoken expectations that I would remain the compliant daughter they wanted me to be. "We just want what's best for you, Gloria," was their constant refrain whenever I questioned their decisions. And for many years I believed them. I trusted that their guidance, however restrictive it felt, came from a place of genuine care and wisdom. Our annual family vacations began when I was 7 years old, with a trip to Disney World. I still remember my father presenting it at Christmas, a colorful brochure wrapped in a box with a red bow. "Our first official family vacation," he announced proudly. "The first of many traditions we'll create together." Those early vacations were magical. We visited national parks, took road trips along the coast, and even went to the Grand Canyon. My parents documented everything with their bulky camera, creating detailed photo albums that lined our living room shelves. These trips were sacred family time, and nothing was allowed to interfere. As I entered my teenage years, the dynamic began to shift. While my friends were allowed to stay home alone or go to summer camps, my attendance on family vacations remained non-negotiable. When I was 16 and asked to skip our trip to Washington, D.C. for a prestigious writing workshop, my mother's face fell with such dramatic disappointment that I immediately withdrew my request. "Family comes first, Gloria," my father said firmly. "There will be other workshops." College at Boston University gave me my first real taste of independence, though even then, my parents found ways to maintain their influence. They insisted on paying my tuition and housing, which gave them leverage to drop by unannounced and question my choices. When I got my first apartment off campus junior year, they helped with the security deposit, but had opinions about everything from my roommates to my furniture. "We're investing in your future," my father would say while reviewing my expenses. "That means we have a stake in making sure you're making good decisions." After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a small marketing firm. The salary was modest, but it was my first step toward true financial independence. I opened my own bank account, started building credit in my name alone, and began declining some of their financial help with its invisible obligations. My mother's response was a mixture of pride and confusion. "You don't need to struggle, honey," she would say when I refused their offer to pay for a new winter coat or upgrade my phone. "That's what parents are for." What they couldn't understand was that my struggle was actually liberation. Every bill I paid myself, every purchase I made with my own money, was a tiny victory of self-determination. The annual family vacations continued through these years, but with growing tension. When I was 26 and received a promotion that conflicted with our planned trip to Yellowstone, my parents rescheduled the entire vacation without consulting anyone else in their lives. "Family tradition is important, Gloria," my mother said, as if that explained everything. By the time I turned 30, I had worked my way up to marketing specialist at a growing tech company called Horizon Solutions. My salary had nearly doubled. My client portfolio was impressive, and I had finally moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Boston that truly felt like my own space decorated with artwork and furniture I had chosen myself without parental input. For the first time, I felt like my parents and I might be able to relate as adults. I invited them to dinner at a nice restaurant to celebrate my promotion and proudly insisted on paying the bill. Though my father tried to reach for his wallet multiple times, I stood firm. "I want to treat you both," I said confidently. "I can afford it now." A flash of something crossed my mother's face, something that looked almost like discomfort. My father cleared his throat and accepted with a tight smile, but their congratulations felt strained. It wasn't until later that I understood my financial independence threatened their primary method of control. Without economic leverage, they had to relate to me differently, and they weren't sure how. When discussion began about this year's family vacation 6 months ago, I saw an opportunity to shift our dynamic. "I'd like to contribute equally to the trip this time," I told them during Sunday dinner at their house. "I'm in a position where I can afford it, and I think it's time." My mother exchanged a quick glance with my father before responding. "Well, that's very generous, honey, but you don't need to." "I want to," I insisted. "We could even do something more special than usual. What about a cruise? I've been researching some options in the Caribbean." To my surprise, they didn't immediately shut down the idea. In fact, after looking at the brochures I had brought, they seemed genuinely enthusiastic. For the first time, it felt like we were planning a vacation together as equals, not as parents indulging their child. "This could be really wonderful," my mother admitted, studying a photo of a pristine beach. "I've always wanted to try a cruise." My father nodded, examining the pricing information. "If we're all splitting it 3 ways, this is actually quite reasonable." That evening, as I drove home, I felt a warmth spreading through my chest. Maybe things were finally changing. Maybe we could build a new kind of relationship based on mutual respect rather than control and obligation. The cruise felt symbolic, a journey not just across water, but into a new chapter of our family story. What I didn't realize was that my parents had a very different journey in mind, one that would ultimately force me to navigate the choppy waters of betrayal, self-respect, and ultimately freedom. The planning phase for our Caribbean cruise quickly became the most positive interaction I'd had with my parents in years. The collaborative nature of researching destinations, comparing ship amenities, and discussing excursion options gave us a shared project that seemed to temporarily bridge the control issues that had dominated our relationship. I created a shared digital folder where we could all upload research and ideas. My mother, surprisingly tech-savvy for someone who still printed her emails, added articles about the best cruise lines for first-timers. My father contributed spreadsheets comparing costs and itineraries with his typical analytical approach. "What about this 7-day Eastern Caribbean route?" I suggested during one of our planning sessions at their dining room table. "It stops at St. Thomas, St. Martin, and Nassau." My mother's eyes lit up as she reviewed the glossy brochure. "The beaches look absolutely beautiful, and look at all these onboard activities." Even my father, typically the more reserved of the two, seemed genuinely excited. "The ship has an excellent reputation for service, and the pricing is reasonable when split 3 ways." We settled on a Royal Caribbean cruise departing from Miami in early May. The timing was perfect, falling just after a major project deadline at work for me and before the summer vacation rush would drive up prices. "I'll put down the deposit to hold our cabins," my father offered. "Then you can reimburse me for your third Gloria." I transferred the money that same evening, along with a message thanking them for embracing my suggestion. For once, I felt like an equal participant in our family tradition, not just a passenger along for the ride my parents had orchestrated. Over the following months, I meticulously saved for the trip, setting aside a portion from each paycheck. I created a vacation fund in my budget app and watched with satisfaction as it grew steadily toward my goal. Beyond my share of the cruise itself, I wanted extra spending money for excursions, souvenirs, and treating my parents to a special dinner on board to show my appreciation. "I've booked the time off work," I told them during our weekly Sunday phone call 3 months before departure. "May 5th through 12th is officially blocked on my calendar." "That's wonderful, honey," my mother replied. "We've done the same. Your father is arranging for his assistant to handle his client meetings that week." I declined invitations to 2 weddings and a college friend's birthday celebration that conflicted with our cruise dates. Sorry, but I'll be swimming with sea turtles in the Caribbean. I texted my friend Rachel, adding a sunglasses emoji. The old Gloria might have felt guilty about choosing family obligations over friends, but this time I was genuinely prioritizing something I wanted to do. As the departure date approached, our family dinner conversations revolved almost exclusively around cruise preparations. My mother had started a packing list 2 months in advance, meticulously researching what to bring for different island excursions and formal nights on the ship. "Do you think I need a new sundress?" she asked one evening over pasta. "I want something nice for the captain's dinner." "Absolutely," I encouraged her. "We should go shopping together. I need to pick up some things too." The following weekend, we spent Saturday at the mall, something we hadn't done together since my college days. As we browsed through summer collections, my mother held up a turquoise maxi dress against herself. "What do you think too bright for me? It's perfect with your coloring." I told her honestly. "You should definitely get it." She smiled, looking momentarily younger than her 60 years. "Maybe I will. It feels good to try something different." I purchased 2 new swimsuits, several casual outfits for excursions, and a semi-formal dress for the upscale restaurants on board. The shopping spree cost more than I would typically spend on clothes, but I justified it as an investment in memories. This trip felt significant, a potential turning point in my relationship with my parents. I downloaded the cruise line's app and began researching shore excursions, bookmarking options to discuss with my parents. Swimming with dolphins in Nassau, a catamaran sail and snorkel trip in St. Martin, a historical walking tour in St. Thomas. "What about this sunset sail?" I asked during dinner one night, showing them the beautiful photos on my phone. "We could book it for our last night in the islands." My father studied the details. "Looks wonderful, though not inexpensive." "My treat," I offered quickly. "I want to do something special for us." My mother patted my hand. "You're so thoughtful, Gloria. This trip is going to be amazing." I even took on some of the logistical planning to help my parents. I researched the best options for getting to Miami, comparing flight prices and schedules. If we take the early flight on Friday, we can have an extra night in Miami before boarding. I explained, showing them the itinerary I'd mapped out. "There's a hotel near the port that offers a shuttle service to the cruise terminal." My father nodded approvingly. "Very efficient planning, Gloria. I'm impressed." Those words meant more to me than he could know. My father's approval had always been harder to earn than my mother's, and his acknowledgement of my competence felt like a significant shift in how he saw me. As May approached, my excitement grew to almost childlike levels. I found myself checking the countdown app on my phone multiple times a day. 60 days, 45 days, 30 days until departure. I started making lists of books to download for relaxing on deck. I researched the best waterproof camera options for snorkeling excursions. I even began monitoring the weather patterns in the Caribbean, hoping for perfect sunshine during our week at sea. I haven't been this excited about a trip in years. I confessed to my best friend Jamie over coffee. "It feels different somehow, like we're finally relating as adults instead of them treating me like a kid." Jamie, who had witnessed my complicated relationship with my parents for over a decade, looked cautiously optimistic. "That's great, Gloria. Just remember that old patterns can be hard to break. Keep your expectations realistic." I nodded, acknowledging her wisdom, but unable to suppress my enthusiasm. "I know, but something feels different this time. I think we're turning a corner." With just 3 weeks to go, I had my highlights done, scheduled a manicure and pedicure for the day before departure, and even invested in some fancy new luggage, with 4 spinner wheels that my father had recommended for navigating the cruise terminal easily. The cruise had become more than just a vacation in my mind. It represented a new chapter, a recalibration of my family dynamic, based on mutual respect rather than control and obligation. I had no idea that instead of this hopeful new beginning, I was sailing straight into a storm of betrayal that would ultimately force me to chart an entirely different course for my life. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening, exactly 2 weeks before we were scheduled to depart for Miami. I was curled up on my couch reviewing presentation slides for a client meeting when my mother's name flashed across my phone screen. Assuming she wanted to discuss last-minute cruise details, I answered cheerfully, "Hey, Mom, I was just looking at those snorkeling excursions again. I think we should definitely book in advance." There was a pause. Then my mother's voice came through, uncharacteristically hesitant. Gloria, honey, that's actually why I'm calling. About the cruise. Something in her tone immediately sent a warning signal through my body. I sat up straighter, setting my laptop aside. What about it? She sighed heavily. Your father and I have been going over our finances again, and I'm afraid we've had to make a difficult decision. We simply can't afford the cruise right now. We're going to have to cancel. The statement was so unexpected that for a moment I couldn't process it. Cancel? But we've been planning for months. We've already paid deposits. I know, sweetie, and we're just sick about it, but your father's investment portfolio took an unexpected hit last quarter, and we need to be more conservative with our spending right now. My mind raced to find a solution. Mom, I can pay a larger portion. It's not a problem. I've been saving for this, and I have more than enough. That's very generous, but no, she replied firmly. We couldn't accept that. Put Dad on the phone, please, I requested, feeling a surge of determination. Perhaps I could reason with him directly about the financial arrangements. I heard muffled voices. Then my father came on the line. Gloria, I understand you're disappointed, but our decision is final. We can't afford the cruise right now, and we won't have you paying more than your fair share. Dad, it's not about fair shares. I want us to go on this trip together. I can easily cover more of the cost. It's not a problem. His voice took on the authoritative tone I remembered from childhood disagreements. It's a matter of principle, Gloria. Your mother and I won't be financially beholden to our daughter. That's not how we operate. But all the planning, the deposits, what about those? I asked, still struggling to accept this sudden change. We'll take the loss on the deposits, he stated. It's unfortunate, but sometimes these things happen. We can plan something more modest later in the summer, perhaps a few days at the Cape instead. I felt a childlike disappointment washing over me quickly, followed by adult frustration. After all these months of preparation and anticipation, after I'd declined other invitations and spent money on cruise-specific purchases, they were unilaterally canceling our plans. I don't understand why this is coming up now 2 weeks before we leave, I pressed. Haven't you been monitoring your investments all along? This seems very sudden. My mother came back on the phone. Gloria, please don't make this harder than it already is. We're disappointed too. We were looking forward to this trip just as much as you were. Her voice carried that familiar note of emotional manipulation, the subtle suggestion that my questions were causing them unnecessary pain. I recognized the pattern, but still found myself responding to it. I'm sorry, I'm just surprised, I said, softening my tone. Maybe I could look at some less expensive options. There might be last-minute deals on shorter cruises. We've discussed it thoroughly, and we need to skip the cruise entirely this year, my father interjected firmly. We appreciate your understanding, Gloria. After hanging up, I sat in my living room feeling deflated. The cruise had represented something important to me, beyond just a vacation. It was supposed to be our first adventure as true adults together, an opportunity to redefine our relationship. A thought occurred to me, and I immediately reached for my laptop. If my parents were canceling due to financial concerns, I should contact the cruise line directly. Perhaps I could salvage my own ticket, even if I had to go alone. I located the booking information and dialed customer service. Hello? I am calling about a reservation under the name Thomas Wilson, I explained to the representative. 3 passengers for the 7-day Eastern Caribbean cruise departing May 5th. After verifying some details, the representative responded cheerfully. Yes, I see that reservation here. How can I help you today? I understand there have been some changes to the booking, I said carefully. Could you confirm the current status? There was the sound of typing. Then the representative replied, Yes, I see that 1 passenger was removed from the booking on April 18th. The other 2 passengers remain confirmed for departure. There's a balance payment due by next week. My hand tightened around the phone. 1 passenger was removed. Which one? Let me check. That would be Gloria Wilson. The reservation now stands for Thomas and Diane Wilson only. A cold sensation spread through my chest. And when was this change made? The system shows the modification was processed on April 18th, so that would have been 4 days ago. 4 days ago. While we were still actively discussing excursion options and packing lists. while I was still transferring money into my vacation fund. "Thank you for the information," I managed to say before ending the call. I sat completely still trying to make sense of what I'd just learned. My parents hadn't canceled the cruise due to financial concerns. They had only canceled me. They were still going just without their daughter. My first instinct was to assume a misunderstanding. Perhaps they had made alternative arrangements I wasn't aware of. Maybe they had canceled the original booking and made a new, less expensive reservation that didn't yet show in the system. I picked up my phone to call them back, then hesitated. Something felt wrong. The conversation we just had was too specific, too detailed in its explanation about financial difficulties. It didn't sound like a miscommunication. It sounded like a carefully constructed story. For the first time, I wondered if my parents had deliberately lied to me. The thought was so foreign, so at odds with the image I held of them, despite our complicated relationship, that I immediately tried to dismiss it. But the customer service representative's words echoed in my mind. One passenger was removed from the booking on April 18th. Not the entire reservation canceled, just me. I decided to wait and investigate further before confronting them. If there was an innocent explanation accusing them, would only damage our relationship. And if they had lied, well, I needed to be certain before facing that painful possibility. That night, I barely slept, my mind cycling through possible explanations and scenarios. By morning, I had convinced myself that there must be a logical reason something I was missing. My parents might be controlling and old-fashioned, but they weren't cruel or deceitful. They wouldn't exclude me from a family tradition while actively lying about it. Would they? The week after my parents' cancellation call was one of the busiest of my professional career. Our marketing team was finalizing a major campaign launch for Horizon Solutions' newest product, and I was knee-deep in client presentations, strategy sessions, and last-minute adjustments to our digital assets. In some ways, the intense workload was a blessing, keeping me too occupied to dwell constantly on the cruise situation. By Friday, our team had successfully launched the campaign, and our initial metrics were exceeding expectations. My boss, Sarah, had publicly acknowledged my contributions during the all-hands meeting, and there was a general feeling of accomplishment permeating the office. Under normal circumstances, I would have been riding high on professional satisfaction. Instead, as the work pressure eased, my thoughts inevitably circled back to my parents and the mysterious cruise cancellation. I hadn't spoken to them since Tuesday's call, using my work deadlines as a convenient excuse to postpone our usual midweek check-in. They had texted a few times casual messages that made no mention of vacation plans or financial troubles. "Hope your project is going well, honey. Don't work too hard. Love, Mom." "Your mother made your favorite lasagna. We'll save you some for Sunday dinner. Dad." Their messages carried the same warm parental tone as always, with no hint of deception or guilt. It made me question my suspicions, wonder if I was overreacting to what might simply be a misunderstanding with the cruise line. At lunch, I retreated to the small courtyard behind our office building with my salad and phone. The spring weather in Boston had finally turned pleasant, with cherry blossoms beginning to bloom against the backdrop of red brick buildings. As I scrolled mindlessly through my social media feeds, trying to distract myself, a particular post stopped my thumb mid-swipe. It was from my mother's rarely used Instagram account, typically reserved for sharing holiday family photos and the occasional gardening triumph. The image showed an airport departure board, and her caption read, "Starting our adventure. Vacation mode. Finally." The timestamp indicated it had been posted 20 minutes ago. My salad forgotten. I quickly navigated to my father's Facebook page. He hadn't posted anything new, but my mother was tagged in his check-in from 4 hours earlier, Logan International Airport with Diane Wilson. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the airline website and entered my parents' frequent flyer numbers, which I knew from years of helping them with online check-ins. Within moments, I had confirmation they were currently on a flight to Miami, the flight that we had researched together. The first leg of our journey to the cruise that had supposedly been canceled due to financial constraints. Still clinging to denial, I told myself they might have found last-minute affordable tickets. Perhaps they decided to take a budget trip to Miami instead of the cruise. It didn't necessarily mean they were still going on the cruise without me, but as I sat there, pieces began falling into place. The specific date they had removed me from the booking, the elaborate story about financial difficulties, the careful way they had framed the cancellation as affecting all of us, not just me. I returned to my desk in a daze, unable to focus on the afternoon's tasks. By 4 o'clock, I gave up any pretense of productivity and told Sarah I needed to leave early. "You've earned it after this week," she assured me. "The campaign launch was fantastic. Go enjoy your weekend." I managed a weak smile. "Thanks. I've got some personal matters to deal with." Back in my apartment, I paced from room to room, alternating between disbelief hurt and growing anger. Around 6:30, my phone chimed with another Instagram notification. My mother had posted again, this time a sunset photo from what was clearly a Miami hotel balcony. "Pre-cruise relaxation. So excited for tomorrow. Royal Caribbean house vacation." There it was, undeniable evidence that my parents had lied to me. They hadn't canceled the cruise due to financial concerns. They had canceled me from the cruise and created an elaborate fiction to cover their actions. I collapsed onto my couch, my phone clutched in my hand, feeling as though someone had knocked the wind out of me. Tears sprang to my eyes, hot and sudden. The betrayal was so unexpected, so contrary to everything I thought I knew about my parents, despite our complicated relationship, that it felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Without thinking, I dialed Jamie's number. When she answered, I couldn't even form complete sentences. "They lied, Jamie. The cruise. They're in Miami right now. They're still going. Without me. They made up this whole story about money problems. But they're there. They're actually there." "Whoa, slow down," Jamie responded, concern evident in her voice. "Who lied your parents about the cruise?" Through broken sentences and occasional sobs, I explained the situation, the cancellation call, the discovery of the modified booking, the social media posts confirming they were proceeding with the vacation without me. "I don't understand," I concluded, wiping tears from my cheeks. "Why would they do this? Why not just tell me they wanted to go alone? Why the elaborate lie?" Jamie was silent for a moment, processing. "Gloria, I hate to say this, but this sounds like part of a pattern. Your parents have always maintained control by controlling information. Remember when they told you your application to that writing program in New York had been rejected, but you later found out you'd actually been accepted?" I hadn't thought about that incident in years. When I was 22, I'd applied to a prestigious summer writing workshop in New York. My parents had intercepted the acceptance letter and told me I hadn't been selected. I only discovered the truth months later when the program sent a follow-up email asking if I'd consider applying again the following year. At the time, my parents had justified their deception as protection, claiming they were concerned about my safety in New York and didn't want me to be disappointed. "This is different," I protested weakly. "That was years ago, and they thought they were protecting me. This is just cruel." "Is it really different?" Jamie challenged gently. "Think about it. You've been asserting your independence more and more. You offered to pay your own way. You took charge of some of the planning. Maybe they weren't comfortable with this new dynamic." Her words hit uncomfortably close to what I'd been thinking myself. The cruise was supposed to represent a shift in our relationship, one where I participated as an equal adult. Perhaps that was precisely what they wanted to avoid. A notification sound interrupted our conversation. Another Instagram post from my mother, this one showing her and my father at a waterfront restaurant raising cocktail glasses to the camera. "Last dinner before boarding tomorrow, cruise life vacation." A fresh wave of hurt washed over me. They weren't just proceeding with the trip, they were publicly celebrating, it apparently unconcerned that I might see their posts. Either they had forgotten I could see their social media, or they simply didn't care. "I have to go," I told Jamie, my voice hardening. "I need some time to think." "Call me anytime," she responded. "Day or night, I mean it. And Gloria, remember that their behavior reflects on them, not on you." After hanging up, I noticed several colleagues had texted congratulations about the successful campaign launch, suggesting drinks to celebrate. Normally, I would have jumped at the chance for some social connection, but tonight I couldn't bear the thought of making small talk while pretending everything was fine. Instead, I ordered takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant, opened a bottle of wine, and sat cross-legged on my living room floor, surrounded by the cruise research I'd accumulated over the past 6 months. Brochures, printouts of excursions, My detailed packing list, the new sundress still hanging in its shopping bag tags attached. As I sifted through these artifacts of anticipation, my sadness gradually crystallized into something sharper, more defined. This wasn't just about a missed vacation. It was about a fundamental breach of trust, about the realization that the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had chosen deception over honesty, control over respect. My phone continued to update with their vacation content throughout the evening. A photo of my mother in the turquoise dress we had shopped for together, a check-in at the hotel we had researched as a family. Each notification was another small wound, another confirmation that the relationship I thought we were building was built on shifting sand. Around midnight, exhausted from emotional turmoil, I finally turned off my phone and crawled into bed. But sleep remained elusive as questions circled endlessly in my mind. What would happen when they returned? Would they maintain the lie fabricating stories about their 2 weeks at home while I had seen the evidence of their Caribbean adventure? Would they eventually confess? Or would they simply expect me to pretend I hadn't noticed to preserve family harmony as I had done so many times before? More importantly, what would I do? Could I confront them without collapsing into hurt and anger? Could I ever trust them again? And what did this deception mean for our relationship moving forward? As dawn broke over Boston, casting long shadows across my bedroom, I finally drifted into restless sleep, no closer to answers, but increasingly certain that things between me and my parents could never be quite the same again. The emotional aftermath of discovering my parents' deception was like riding a turbulent sea. Throughout the weekend, I cycled through waves of different feelings, never sure which would crest next. Sometimes anger surged forward hot and righteous, making me want to call them immediately and demand explanations. Other times hurt pulled me under, leaving me curled on my couch, wondering what I had done to deserve such calculated exclusion from my own family. By Sunday morning, I had developed a ritual of checking their social media first thing upon waking, a form of emotional self-flagellation that I couldn't seem to resist. Their cruise ship had departed Miami on Saturday, and my mother had already posted a series of photos, the vast ship docked at the port their cabin, with its small balcony, and a selfie of them at the sail-away party, champagne flutes in hand. And we're off, 7 days of paradise ahead. Cruise life had Caribbean. Each new post was like pressing on a bruise, painful, yet somehow compulsive. I studied their smiling faces for signs of guilt or discomfort, but found only vacation excitement. They appeared utterly unbothered by their deception, fully enjoying the trip we had planned together. Most bewildering were the occasional texts they sent me maintaining the fiction that they were at home dealing with financial concerns. Beautiful spring day here. Dad's working in the garden. How's your weekend going, honey? The casual dishonesty was staggering. I didn't respond, unsure what I could possibly say without revealing what I knew. By Sunday evening, I felt the walls of my apartment closing in. I needed fresh air and perspective. Bundling up against the spring chill, I walked to the Charles River Esplanade, a place that had always helped clear my thoughts. As the sunset painted the water in shades of orange and pink, I called Jamie, who had been checking in regularly. "I don't know how to process this," I admitted, watching a rowing crew glide across the river's surface. "Part of me wants to confront them immediately. Another part never wants to speak to them again. And then there's this pathetic corner of my heart that's still making excuses for them." "There's nothing pathetic about wanting to believe the best of your parents," Jamie replied gently. "That's completely normal." "But the evidence is undeniable," I said. "They've been posting their entire journey online while texting me as if they're sitting at home. Who does that?" "People who are committed to maintaining control even at the cost of honesty," Jamie suggested. "Have you considered talking to your therapist about this? It seems like the kind of situation where professional perspective might help." I had been seeing Dr. Patterson sporadically for about 2 years initially to deal with work-related anxiety, but our sessions had often circled back to my family dynamics. I hadn't scheduled an appointment in several months, but this situation certainly warranted professional guidance. That's actually a good idea. I'll call tomorrow and see if she can fit me in this week. Monday morning between client calls, I managed to schedule an emergency session with Dr. Patterson for Tuesday afternoon. That evening, another Instagram notification arrived my parents posing on a pristine beach in St. Thomas, the first port of call. Paradise found had island life had vacation. Simultaneously, a text arrived from my mother. Rainy day here in Boston. Thinking of you. Love, Mom. The blatant contradiction made me feel slightly unhinged, as if I were living in an alternate reality. I took a screenshot of both messages side by side and sent it to Jamie with the caption, "Am I losing my mind or are they definitely them?" She responded immediately. This is next level gaslighting. Tuesday's session with Dr. Patterson provided some much needed clarity. After explaining the situation in detail, including showing her the contradictory social media posts and text messages, I finally asked the question that had been haunting me. Why would they do this? What possible reason could justify such an elaborate deception? Dr. Patterson, a compassionate woman in her 50s with a direct approach I had always appreciated, considered carefully before responding. From what you've described of your relationship history, your parents have consistently used various forms of control to maintain the family dynamic they're comfortable with. Financial assistance with strings attached, emotional manipulation when you assert independence, information control when you were younger. She gestured toward my phone with the damning screenshots. This situation represents an escalation, but not a fundamental change in pattern. You've been increasingly asserting your independence, particularly with this trip, where you offered to pay your own way and took initiative in the planning. That represents a shift in power dynamics that they may find threatening. But why not just tell me they wanted a vacation alone? I asked, still struggling to understand. Why the lie about financial problems? Because an honest conversation would require acknowledging you as an equal adult with valid feelings and reactions, she explained. It would mean respecting your autonomy enough to have a potentially uncomfortable discussion. The lie allows them to avoid that discomfort while maintaining control of the narrative and their image as parents. Her words resonated with patterns I had observed but never fully articulated. My parents had always been more concerned with maintaining a certain family image, both publicly and within our own dynamic, than with addressing difficult realities. So, what do I do now? I asked, feeling simultaneously clearer and more troubled. That depends entirely on what you want going forward, Dr. Patterson replied. You're facing one of those pivotal moments that can define a relationship. You could confront them directly, which might lead to defensiveness, but could potentially clear the air. You could wait until they return and see if they maintain the deception. Or you could use this time to reflect on what boundaries you need to establish for your own well-being. I keep thinking about Sunday dinner, I admitted. They're scheduled to return Saturday. We always have dinner at their house on Sunday. I can't imagine sitting there pretending I don't know they've been lying to me for weeks. Then perhaps that's your answer, she suggested. Maybe it's time to break that pattern and prioritize your emotional health over family tradition. By Wednesday, the cruise ship had reached St. Martin, according to my mother's enthusiastic posts. Meanwhile, her text messages continued the fiction of being at home, even mentioning a neighbor's dog that had supposedly gotten loose in their yard. The dual narratives were becoming almost surreal. With each new post and contradictory text, my hurt was increasingly overshadowed by indignation. The sheer audacity of the deception, the apparent confidence that I would never discover the truth, felt profoundly disrespectful. That evening, Jamie came over with takeout and wine, a gesture of friendship I deeply appreciated. As we sat in my living room scrolling through the latest vacation updates, she posed a question I hadn't considered. Do you think they've done this before? Maybe not with something as big as a vacation, but smaller deceptions? The question sent me mentally reviewing past interactions. Had there been other inconsistencies I'd overlooked or rationalized away? Other convenient excuses that might have hidden different motives? I honestly don't know, I admitted. I've always trusted them despite our issues. I've questioned their control, but not their honesty. Maybe that's why this hurts so much, Jamie suggested, refilling our wine glasses. It's forcing you to reconsider not just this incident, but potentially your entire understanding of your relationship. By Thursday, I had reached a state of emotional exhaustion. The constant checking of social media, the analysis of every text, the endless mental replaying of our conversations leading up to the cancellation had drained me completely. When my phone chimed with another Instagram notification, I almost didn't look. But habit prevailed, and I found myself staring at a photo of my parents on a catamaran sunset sail in St. Martin, the very excursion I had offered to book as my special treat for us. The caption read, "Most beautiful sunset we've ever seen, had making, memories had grateful." Something inside me finally snapped. This wasn't just any excursion they had taken without me. This was specifically the one I had researched and offered to pay for as a gift to them. They had not only excluded me from our family vacation, but had appropriated my planned gesture of appreciation. In that moment, the remaining threads of confusion and self-doubt dissolved. The situation was crystal clear. My parents had deliberately deceived me, excluded me from a family tradition we had planned together, and were now enjoying the very experiences I had helped research and organize, all while maintaining an elaborate fiction through direct communications with me. No possible explanation could justify such calculated behavior. No family dynamic, however complicated, could excuse this level of dishonesty and disregard. As I stared at their smiling faces against the Caribbean sunset, I made a decision. When they returned, I would confront them directly, not with the emotional vulnerability of a hurt daughter, but with the clear-eyed determination of an adult who deserved basic respect and honesty. And regardless of how that conversation went, I would need to fundamentally reconsider my relationship with them, establish new boundaries, and perhaps create some distance to protect myself from future deceptions. The realization was both painful and liberating. Something important had broken between us, something that could never be completely repaired. But in that breaking, I felt the first stirrings of a different kind of freedom, one that had nothing to do with financial independence or physical distance, but with emotional sovereignty. For the first time, I saw with perfect clarity that I could not change my parents or their behavior, but I could change how I responded to it. I could choose self-respect over family harmony, honesty over comfortable illusions, authentic relationships over manipulative control. As I put down my phone and looked around my apartment, a space that reflected my own choices and identity, I felt a strange sense of calm replacing the emotional turbulence of the past days. Whatever happened next would be difficult, but I would face it on my own terms, guided by my own values, rather than the expectations and manipulations that had shaped so much of our family history. My parents returned from their 2-week Caribbean cruise on a sunny Saturday afternoon in late May. I knew the exact timing because my mother had helpfully documented their entire journey on social media, right down to their final breakfast on the ship and their flight back to Boston. Meanwhile, her texts continued the parallel narrative of their life at home, most recently mentioning my father's back pain from working in the yard all week. The cognitive dissonance of these dual realities had become almost fascinating in its absurdity. By the time their plane touched down at Logan International, I had moved beyond the initial shock and hurt to a state of cold clarity. I had spent the 2 weeks of their absence processing my emotions, consulting with Dr. Patterson, and developing a plan for confrontation that would prioritize truth and self-respect over the conflict avoidance that had characterized much of our relationship. Sunday morning, my phone lit up with the expected text. "Looking forward to seeing you for dinner tonight, honey. I'm making pot roast your favorite. Love, Mom." Instead of my usual quick confirmation, I responded with a suggestion that would disrupt our normal pattern while giving me the advantage of neutral territory. "Actually, I'd prefer to meet at Riverside Bistro downtown at 6 instead. I'll make a reservation." There was a noticeable delay before her reply arrived. "Oh, that's different. Any special occasion?" "Just felt like a change," I texted back, deliberately vague. "See you at 6. Riverside Bistro was upscale enough to discourage a scene, but casual enough that we could have a frank conversation. I arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table that offered some privacy, while still being public enough to encourage civility. When my parents walked in, they looked tanned and relaxed, exactly as people returning from a Caribbean cruise should look. My mother was wearing a new necklace I didn't recognize, probably purchased during one of their port stops. My father's usually pallid complexion had taken on a healthy glow. Gloria, sweetheart. My mother leaned in for her usual hug, which I returned with conscious restraint. This is such a nice surprise. Though you didn't need to spend the money on a restaurant. I had dinner all planned. I wanted to meet here, I replied evenly, gesturing for them to sit. How have you been? Oh, you know, nothing exciting, my father responded, settling into his chair. Just the usual routines at home. Your mother's been helping Eleanor next door with her garden redesign. The lie was delivered so smoothly, with such casual confidence, that for a surreal moment I almost questioned my own knowledge of reality. Had I imagined the cruise? Had I misinterpreted their social media posts somehow? I took a steadying breath, reminding myself of the evidence I had meticulously collected over the past 2 weeks. Screenshots of their vacation photos alongside contradictory texts. The confirmation from the cruise line that only my reservation had been canceled. The public timeline of their journey documented in real time across multiple platforms. The waiter arrived to take our drink orders, providing a brief reprieve from conversation. Once he departed, my father turned to me with practiced interest. How's work been? Any progress on that big campaign you were mentioning? It launched successfully, I replied, but that's not what I want to discuss tonight. My mother's eyebrows rose slightly. Oh, what's on your mind, honey? I reached for my water glass, taking a deliberate sip while gathering my thoughts. The confrontation I had rehearsed in my mind dozens of times was now imminent, and despite my preparation, I felt a flutter of anxiety. I know about the cruise, I stated finally, my voice calm but firm. I know you went without me. I know you lied about canceling it due to financial concerns. I know you've been in the Caribbean for the past 2 weeks while texting me as if you were at home. The change in their expressions would have been almost comical under different circumstances. My mother's smile froze, then faltered. My father's relaxed posture stiffened immediately. They exchanged a quick glance, some unspoken communication passing between them. Gloria, I don't know what you're talking about. My mother attempted, her voice slightly higher than normal. We've been home the entire time. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder of screenshots I'd prepared, and placed it on the table between us. The screen showed a photo of them on the ship's deck, clearly time-stamped from the previous week, alongside a text from the same day claiming they were attending a neighborhood barbecue. Please don't insult my intelligence by continuing to lie, I said quietly. I've known since day one. I've seen every post, every check, and every photo. I called the cruise line and confirmed that only my reservation was canceled, not the entire trip. I know everything. My father's expression shifted from denial to damage control. Gloria, there's clearly been a misunderstanding here. If you'd let us explain— Explain what exactly? I interrupted, surprising myself with my assertiveness. Explain why you told me the cruise was canceled due to money concerns when you were actually proceeding with it without me. Explain why you've been texting me about gardening and neighborhood events while posting photos from Caribbean beaches. What possible explanation could justify that level of deception? My mother's eyes had begun to glisten with tears, her go-to response when confronted with uncomfortable situations. Normally, those tears would have immediately softened my resolve, triggered my ingrained desire to maintain family peace at any cost. But tonight, I recognized them as another form of emotional manipulation and remained steady. We thought it would be easier this way, she finally admitted, her voice small. We wanted some time, just the two of us. A second honeymoon of sorts. Then why not simply tell me that? I asked. Why create this elaborate deception instead of having an honest conversation? We knew you'd be disappointed, my father interjected. You were so excited about the trip. We didn't want to hurt your feelings. The absurdity of his statement was breathtaking. So instead of risking my disappointment with honesty, you chose to actively lie to me for weeks. How exactly did you think that would hurt me less? The waiter returned with our drinks and to take our dinner orders. I requested only a salad, knowing I wouldn't have much appetite. My parents ordered mechanically, the vacation glow now completely faded from their expressions. Once we were alone again, my mother reached across the table toward my hand, which I subtly moved away. "Sweetheart, you're making this into something bigger than it is," she said. "Yes, we should have been more direct with you. But it was just a vacation. It wasn't malicious." "It wasn't just a vacation," I corrected her. "It was a deliberate exclusion from a family tradition we've maintained for years. It was weeks of unnecessary lies. It was a fundamental breach of trust." My father shifted into the authoritative tone he had used throughout my childhood when laying down rules. "Gloria, you're overreacting. Everyone deserves privacy, sometimes even parents. You're too caught up in your own perspective to see that." His attempt to flip the situation to make me the unreasonable one for expecting basic honesty crystallized exactly what Dr. Patterson had described about their need to control the narrative. "This isn't about privacy," I responded steadily. "You're entitled to take any vacation you want without me. What you're not entitled to do is lie to my face about it repeatedly while expecting me to never discover the truth. That shows a profound lack of respect for me as an adult." "That's not fair," my mother protested. "We've always respected you." "No," I said, the clarity of the past 2 weeks' reflection evident in my voice. "You've always loved me, I don't doubt that. But you've rarely respected me as an independent adult with the right to make my own choices and know the truth." Our food arrived, creating another brief interlude in the increasingly tense conversation. None of us made more than a pretense of eating. "What do you want us to say, Gloria?" my father finally asked, his tone suggesting impatience with what he clearly viewed as an overblown situation. "We made a mistake in how we handled this. We apologize. Can we move past it now?" His words contained the form of an apology, without any real acknowledgement of the harm done or understanding of why it mattered so deeply. It was the same superficial conflict resolution he had always employed: minimize, apologize quickly, and expect immediate forgiveness without genuine accountability. "I need more than words right now," I told them. "I need to take some time away from our usual patterns. I won't be coming to Sunday dinners for a while. I need space to reconsider what kind of relationship works for me going forward." My mother's tears spilled over at this. "You're punishing us for one mistake. That's not fair, Gloria." "This isn't punishment," I explained calmly. "It's a boundary. And it's not about one mistake, it's about a pattern that's become clear to me. I need time to process everything and decide what feels healthy for me." My father's expression hardened. "So you're cutting us off because we took one vacation without you. Don't you think that's a bit childish and dramatic?" His dismissiveness nearly cracked my composure, but I held firm. What's childish is lying instead of having an adult conversation. What's dramatic is creating an elaborate deception rather than simply telling your daughter you wanted a trip alone. I reached for my purse and placed enough cash on the table to cover the barely touched meal. "I'm going to go now. I'll reach out when I've had some time to think. Please respect my need for space." As I stood, my mother grabbed my wrist. "Gloria, please don't leave like this. Let's talk more." I gently but firmly removed her hand. "We've talked enough for tonight. I need time." Walking out of the restaurant, I felt a mixture of emotions. There was the expected sadness and lingering hurt, but overshadowing those was an unexpected sense of liberation. For perhaps the first time in my relationship with my parents, I had directly confronted a painful truth instead of accommodating it. I had prioritized my own emotional well-being over the familiar pattern of smoothing things over to maintain family harmony. Outside, the spring evening was unusually warm, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of nearby flowering trees. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the fresh air that seemed somehow symbolic of the new space I had just created in my life. My phone began buzzing with texts and calls almost immediately, but I silenced it and walked to the nearby park instead. As I sat on a bench watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I acknowledged that the path ahead would not be easy. 32 years of established family dynamics wouldn't change overnight. My parents would likely cycle through various strategies to reestablish the previous pattern, from anger to guilt to minimization. But something fundamental had shifted within me. The cruise deception, painful as it was, had provided a clarity I might never have achieved otherwise. I could see now that true adult relationships required mutual respect and honesty, not control and manipulation disguised as protection or care. Whatever happened next, I would approach it from this new place of self-awareness and determination to establish healthier boundaries. The journey ahead might be challenging, but for the first time, I would be charting my own course rather than following the map my parents had always drawn for me. The months following my confrontation with my parents became a period of profound personal growth and healing. Initially, the separation was more difficult than I had anticipated. Years of ingrained patterns don't dissolve easily, and the absence of our regular contact left an undeniable void in my life. There were moments, especially during those first few weeks, when I questioned my decision and felt the pull to return to familiar dynamics for the sake of comfort and connection. My parents' responses to my boundary setting followed a predictable pattern. First came the barrage of calls and texts alternating between defensive justifications. "We just wanted some time alone. Is that so terrible?" Dismissive minimization. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill." And emotional appeals. "You're breaking your mother's heart." When those tactics didn't produce the desired result of me relinquishing my boundary, they shifted to enlisting family allies with my Aunt Susan, calling to tell me how worried sick everyone was about our little disagreement. Through it all, I maintained my distance not out of punitive intent, but from a genuine need to recalibrate my understanding of our relationship and my place within it. Dr. Patterson's weekly sessions became an essential anchor during this turbulent time, helping me recognize the manipulation tactics for what they were and affirming my right to establish healthier patterns of interaction. "What you're experiencing is quite common when someone first sets significant boundaries with family members who aren't accustomed to them," she explained during one particularly difficult session after my mother had left a tearful voicemail accusing me of tearing the family apart. "They're essentially testing the strength of your boundary, seeing if emotional pressure will cause you to revert to the previous dynamic. Each time you maintain your position calmly and clearly, you're demonstrating that the old patterns will no longer be effective." I found tremendous value in understanding the psychological aspects of what we were all experiencing. My parents weren't villains in a drama. They were people following deeply ingrained patterns of behavior that had worked for them for decades. My new boundaries weren't a punishment, but a necessary recalibration of our relationship into something healthier for all involved, even if they couldn't see that yet. As summer arrived, I found myself building stronger connections outside my family circle. Jamie had always been a close friend, but our bond deepened as she supported me through this challenging transition. Other friendships that had taken a backseat to family obligations began to flourish as I invested more time and emotional energy in those relationships. "I've never seen you so present," my colleague Michaela commented during a weekend hiking trip in the White Mountains. "It's like you've always had one foot out the door before always checking your phone for family texts or mentally preparing for Sunday dinner. Now you're fully here." Her observation startled me with its accuracy. I had always considered myself an engaged friend, but in retrospect, I could see how family obligations and dynamics had constantly pulled at my attention, creating a subtle but persistent divided focus in other relationships. Work, too, became a more fulfilling aspect of my life, free from the emotional drain of managing my parents' expectations and navigating their subtle manipulations. I found new creative energy for my marketing projects. In August, I was offered a promotion to senior marketing specialist with a significant salary increase and more creative control over campaigns. Perhaps most symbolically healing was the solo trip I took to St. Lucia in July, a different Caribbean island than the ones my parents had visited on their cruise. I had never traveled internationally alone, before always assuming such adventures required family, or at minimum a travel companion. But as I researched destinations, something about creating my own Caribbean experience, separate from the one that had been taken from me, felt powerfully reclamatory. The week in St. Lucia became a personal milestone. I snorkeled among vibrant coral reefs, hiked to the summit of Gros Piton, took a cooking class featuring local cuisine, and spent peaceful hours reading on pristine beaches. Each experience was entirely my own, chosen, for my interests alone, uncompromised by anyone else's preferences or limitations. One evening, sitting on my balcony overlooking the Caribbean Sea, as the sun set in a spectacular display of orange and purple, I realized I hadn't thought about my parents or our situation for the entire day. The constant background hum of family tension had at least temporarily fallen silent, replaced by a profound sense of peace and self-connection. I captured the sunset with my camera, a hobby I'd recently rekindled, and felt a surge of gratitude for the painful events that had ultimately led to this moment of solitary joy. Without the cruise deception and its aftermath, I might never have discovered this capacity for independent adventure and self-sufficient happiness. When I returned to Boston tanned and rejuvenated, I found a letter from my parents in my mail. Unlike their previous communications, which had been reactive and emotionally charged, this one seemed more thoughtful. They acknowledged, if somewhat guardedly, that their handling of the cruise situation had been inappropriate and expressed a desire to find a way forward that respects everyone's feelings. While not the full recognition of the deeper pattern that I had hoped for, it represented a small step toward potential reconciliation. I didn't respond immediately, allowing myself time to consider what kind of relationship I wanted with them, moving forward, and what conditions would make that relationship healthy for me. After consultation with Dr. Patterson and much personal reflection, I finally crafted a response in early September, nearly 4 months after our confrontation at the restaurant. I outlined clearly what I would need to rebuild trust, acknowledgement of the pattern of control, rather than just the single incident respect for my boundaries, without guilt or manipulation, and a commitment to honest communication, even when difficult or uncomfortable. I love you both, I wrote in conclusion, and I value having you in my life. But that relationship needs to be based on mutual respect and honesty. I'm open to working toward that together, but I won't return to patterns that are harmful to my well-being. Their response was cautious but promising. My father, ever practical, suggested we meet with a family therapist to ensure clear communication on all sides, while his framing still subtly distributed responsibility equally, rather than acknowledging their greater role in the dysfunction. His willingness to seek professional guidance represented significant movement from his usual position of authority. Our first session with Dr. Levine, a family therapist with a gentle but direct approach, was uncomfortable but productive. My parents struggled to fully recognize the control patterns I described initially, defending their actions as normal parental care and protection. But as the conversation progressed, glimpses of understanding began to emerge, particularly from my mother. "I suppose I never really thought about how it might feel from Gloria's perspective," she admitted during a breakthrough moment. "We've always made decisions based on what we thought was best, but maybe we haven't always considered how those decisions affect her as an adult with her own life." Progress was slow and nonlinear. Some sessions ended with genuine connection and hope. Others devolved into familiar defensive patterns that left me emotionally drained. But gradually, incrementally, we began establishing a new foundation for our relationship, one built on more conscious awareness of our dynamics and more deliberate choices in our interactions. I maintained my boundary regarding Sunday dinners, instead suggesting alternative ways to connect that didn't reinforce old patterns. We met occasionally for lunch at neutral locations. We attended a concert together at the Boston Symphony. Small, manageable interactions that allowed us to practice new ways of relating without immediately falling back into established roles. By Thanksgiving, traditionally a holiday fraught with family expectations and potential tension, I felt secure enough in our progress to accept their invitation to dinner. The experience wasn't perfect. Some old habits emerged under the stress of holiday preparations, but it was markedly different from previous years. When my father began slipping into his authoritative tone while discussing my recent career decisions, I was able to gently but firmly redirect the conversation. And notably, he recognized and adjusted his approach without defensiveness. As the holiday season progressed, I reflected on the tremendous journey of the past 7 months. The person I was now caring more for my own well-being, setting clearer boundaries, pursuing independent interests, maintaining healthier relationships bore little resemblance to the conflict-avoidant daughter who had been devastated by a cruise cancellation in the spring. The betrayal had been painful, undeniably so, But like a bone that breaks and heals stronger at the fracture point, the breaking of trust had ultimately led to a stronger, more authentic sense of self and more honest relationships, not just with my parents, but in all areas of my life. One evening in December, as I decorated my apartment for the holidays, I came across the sundress I had purchased for the cruise still hanging in my closet with tags attached. Instead of triggering sadness or anger, as it might have months before, it prompted a gentle smile of recognition. I removed the tags and added the dress to a donation bag for a local women's shelter. Someone else would create new memories with it now, and that felt perfectly right. The journey wasn't complete, of course. Family patterns established over decades require vigilant awareness to prevent backsliding. Trust rebuilds slowly through consistent actions rather than dramatic gestures or promises. There would still be difficult conversations and moments of frustration ahead. But standing in my apartment that winter evening, surrounded by holiday decorations, I had chosen to please only myself. I felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude. The cruise that never happened had ultimately carried me to a more valuable destination than any Caribbean island could offer: genuine self-respect, authentic relationships, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your own worth is not determined by anyone else's recognition of it. The most important journey I had discovered was not across ocean waters, but across the sometimes turbulent, always transformative seas of personal growth and authentic connection, navigated with courage, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to truth. Have you ever discovered a betrayal that ultimately led to positive change in your life? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences about setting boundaries and finding freedom. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes walking away is the first step toward finding your true path forward.